Is this usually the time that ACT Party leader and Minister of just about everything, David Seymour, joins us to review the week and I guess preview to what might be coming up next week. He joins us now. David, lovely to have you on the show again. What sort of week have you had this week? Good week, bad week?
Oh, look, I think it's a great week. I mean, I just look at it. If a person like me can go from twerking on TV to acting Prime Minister in 5 years flat, this is the greatest country on earth. There's no problems with there's no problems with social mobility here. Anyone making excuses, I tell you, you can do it, kids.
Well, does that mean that Reagan will be Prime Minister of Australia in 5 years?
Oh, look, I think Reagan has been much maligned, and it's interesting the way people have responded. Because I actually think Albanese, the Australian Prime Minister, got it right when he said, look, you know, she gave it a go. And too often we're very quick to laugh and snigger and drag people down. Actually, if a person's prepared to put themselves out there, try something a bit different, we should be more open to celebrating that. It's a little bit like what I see with charter schools. You know, you can have your opinion on it, but at the end of the day, you've got a whole lot of educators saying, hang on, what we're doing is not working. We need to do something better and new. And the overwhelming response is, oh, well, look, you know, is it going to work? Is it safe? I don't know. It doesn't sound like a good idea to me. Well, we've got to get over that attitude.
Yeah, I was just going to ask you about that in actual fact. You say you've got, over 50 applications for charter schools. Is that right?
Yeah, so we've just opened the preliminary round expressions of interest. There's 79 entities that have gone through the process and said we would like to open a charter. That includes 10 who were our existing state schools who say we've got a school now but would like it to convert to being a charter school. And I think really for people who say that charter schools aren't needed, that there's no demand, actually there's a huge number of people out there who have got themselves organised, come up with a proposal and put it in. And look, obviously not all of them will be good, some of them will be declined, but the point is right now there's more people wanting to run a charter school than the government has agreed to fund, so we're actually oversubscribed.
Oh, okay. Is that the story? So how many in the first tranche will there be?
Well, it will depend on the quality and how prepared they are. But there could be up to 50, 15 new ones and 35 conversions. Given that we've only got 10 potential conversions, that puts a cap on that. So if you had 15 new ones and 10 of those, that'll give you 25. But we're going to open up applications every year. So over the next couple of years, you'd expect to see quite a few more.
So let me get this right. The quality of, or the measurement of success of these charter schools will be obviously some form of testing, whether it under NCA or with NCA or prior to that. And you'll be measuring those charter schools and how they take those kids against, I guess, a similar group of kids in the mainstream education system and seeing if they do better, yeah?
That's exactly right. So it's based on how much progress are these students making, because they all start at different levels. In some cases, charters have had students who, are pretty open when you visit the schools. I used to visit them. I'd say, what school are you guys going to? And they'd say the school. I say, well, when was the last time you went? And they'd say, 2 years ago. So students start at different places, but the question is how much progress are they making as tested by the likes of NCEA and EASTL, which is a well-known testing mechanism in primary and intermediate schools. And then the next point is attendance. So we're basically signing a contract between the government and the school operator to say if the kids show up and learn in a demonstrable way, we will give you a cash amount per student equivalent to what we would have spent on them anyway, and you can do what you like with it. But you've got to keep getting those results.
No, fair enough. And the proof's in the pudding, as you know, and you're going to run the... Well, I suppose, is it an experiment, or do you think that it's a bit more than that?
Well, initially it's going to be 50 schools over the first few years, so that's a big initiative. We ran a pilot on this with charters last time. Unfortunately, Labor shut them down before it was possible to analyse the data. But every indication we had was positive. And people point to the school that we shut down. I say that's exactly the point. There's failing schools that should be shut down but aren't. It's not a weakness that we did shut down a failing charter school, because then you can get someone else better to look after those children's education, which is beneficial to them, which I think is an interesting point, because so much of the debate is about the teachers in the schools. I'm 100% focused on what's best for the students.
Yeah, and I guess the other thing is, I could do it now. I could just go through New Zealand and name all the failing schools that are state schools now, David. I imagine you could do that pretty easily too.
Yeah, and look, they go, I mean, I'm originally from up north, and, they have a commissioner managing them, then they go under statutory management, they go in and out, and nothing really changes. The students are let down. They decide that they're not for them. I had one student come up to me at Vanguard Military School, and she said something to me I'll never forget. I actually used it in my maiden speech at Parliament. She said, "I never knew I was smart until I came here," because too many of these students come to the conclusion that, if it's not school, it must be them, and therefore they're not very bright, and they just go through their life thinking that and lose their potential. So, the more that these students can actually find a place where they respond to the learning, Vanguard Military was a great example of that, then the more chance that kids have to build their self-esteem, and maybe we even get into this mental health crisis that everyone talked about.
Fair enough. Listen, all power to you. The only problem, I guess, is, and you've obviously thought about this as well, is one day there will be a centre-left government that will be returned to New Zealand. That's just the way these things ebb and flow, as you know. It's a bit like oil and gas exploration. You're in here at the moment, you're encouraging oil and gas exploration, but if you've got on the other side, it's a difficult plan, isn't it? If you know that the other side is determined to get rid of them as soon as they get in.
Yeah, I think that's a fair question for people thinking about getting involved in them, and it's true. Labor have vowed to close down charter schools no matter what evidence is presented to them. So that's a problem, but a couple of points about it. Number one, they didn't actually shut them down last time. I mean, Vanguard, for example, shut down for one day, reopened the next day as a state school, because they knew that fundamentally they were working. Making them state schools required them to go back onto the union's collective agreements. And that's all this is really about, is that charter schools are allowed to have individual employment contracts with each teacher, and that means that they can pay the good ones more, and if they're not performing, let them go very easily. That's death to the unions, and that's why the unions will do anything to fight them. However, they didn't close them down. They reopened them as state schools, and they all carried on, and they all still exist. I was actually just on the motorway. I saw a van from middle school West Auckland driving along the motorway right now. There's a chance that they'll go back to being a charter school, but they still exist 10 years later. So that's the first thing. The second thing is we're going to make it much harder for Labor even to do that, because the contracts this time will be 10-year contracts, renewable twice. So 10 by 10 by 10 is really a 30-year commitment. So long as they're achieving their results, those contracts continue. And second of all, there's just going to be heaps more of them. And I think that Labor will find that it's been going for longer, it's committed longer, and it's going to be much harder for them to reverse.
One of the arguments that have been used against them, David, is that they are going to get more funding, the charter schools, than a comparable school would in the public sector. Is that right or wrong?
It's wrong, but I understand why people think that. The unions have gone on and on about it, and the way it works under the old model was like this. If you started a new state school, then you would get funded at quite a large rate while you built up your role. And if you took the funding you got and divided it by the number of students you had in the first few years, then you would get a big number per student. And that was true of charter schools last time around, but it was also true of any new state school at the time, and it's true of any new state school now. So it was true, but it was also a bit misleading. What we're doing this time round is we're taking that argument off the table. The schools will get a per student amount from day one. So if you only have 20 students on your first day, you only get funded for 20 students on your first day. So in a way that they're actually going to be funded less than a new state school. but they'll be paid. They'll always be paid the same per student. So I hope that's clear. I know it gets into the nitty gritty, but the underlying principle is the funding follows the kid. Charter schools get no more money per student than the same student would be funded in a state school.